Emotions are a very weird thing. If you want to learn about emotion, you can listen to Carly Rae Jepsen's album, Emotion. It's a very good album about emotion, and it's one of my favorites of the year. I know it wasn't released this year, but the year it came out, I was in grade 10 and I really enjoyed that album. Speaking of emotions, though, two fan bases were on completely opposite sides of the emotional spectrum last night. And no, I'm not talking about Canucks fans and Tampa Bay Lightning fans. I already talked about that in a previous video. What we're talking about here today is the Montreal Canadiens and the Detroit Red Wings game that concluded last night. Because this was a game that featured 2 out of my 4 favorite teams. Now, full disclosure, I did not watch this game. This game started at approximately the same time as the Canucks and the Lightning game, and because the Canucks are above and beyond my favorite team, and they probably will be like that for the rest of my life, I had to watch that game. So this Habs and this Red Wings game wasn't on my radar in the slightest as something that I was actively trying to watch. However, being a person who does follow the Habs and the Red Wings in a close capacity as a fan, I was able to acknowledge the reactions and the emotions from both of the fan bases. And things were very, very contrasting here. Now, I know the Vancouver and Tampa Bay game had some very contrasted personalities amongst the fans. The Lightning fans were crazy happy because they won 8 in a row and they scored 9 goals. The Canucks fans were very crazy pessimistic. But this Red Wings and Habs game had a sense of irony to it that takes it above and beyond the normal 9-2 Super Bowl, unobtainable, unsustainable beating that the Lightning put on the Canucks. And it's something that I think definitely highlights a few issues here. The final score is 4-3. Detroit. 3 Detroit over the Montreal Canadiens. Think about it like this. The Canadiens have lost to the Red Wings 3 times this season. Really? Really? Now, the Habs are in a bit of a slump right now. And the Red Wings, well, they've been in a slump the entire year. But getting a win, it feels great. And a lot of Red Wings fans were really stoked to see that Motown was actually getting a dub. And furthermore, the irony here is the fact that the guy who got the game-winning goal, hey, it's Filip Zadina, with about 4 minutes left in the third period. Filip, I'm gonna make the teams that passed on me regret passing on me, Zadina. Filip, oh, Jesperi Kotkaniemi is not Filip Zadina, Zadina. Filip, 6th overall, Zadina. Filip, projected 3rd overall pick, Zadina. Filip, many Habs fans thought they would be taking, but took Kotkaniemi instead, Zadina. This is the Filip Zadina that a lot of people were kind of putting the labels on. Because hey, the top 2 picks in that draft, Dahlin and Svechnikov, they're good NHL players. Kotkaniemi, he was a good NHL player last year, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. Brady Tkachuk, he was a good player last year and this year. Barrett Hayton, although he was a little bit controversial due to the helmets at the World Juniors, he is an effective player. Then you take a look at the rest. Filip Zadina is the next one in line, and he was the one that was in the AHL doing his thing and who was kind of under a little bit of a spotlight upon being called up to Detroit because he wasn't being played to the best of his ability. Jeff Blashill and the way he was being deployed, that was all a controversial subject in Detroit. And now he's been given the chances to actually do well. So this performance, it's almost like a slap in the face to all the haters, all the doubters, and all the people who were saying, okay, yeah, I'm happy the Montreal Canadiens passed on Filip Zadina. Now, obviously, in the long term, Kotkaniemi still has the utmost potential to be a better player, a more valuable player, a more worthy 3rd overall pick than Filip Zadina. And this is just one game we're talking about here. But the fact of the matter is, if you take all these factors and you put it together for one game that took place on a Monday night, you get yourself a fan base for the Montreal Canadiens that's really, really upset. A fan base that honestly is just struggling to get through right now. All the Habs fans are overreacting in the same way that Canucks fans would overreact when we'd go on a mini win streak and then go on a losing streak. It's these big Canadian markets with impatient fan bases that get it the worst. And the Habs, right now, in their last 10, they're 2-7-1. And they're not doing all too great. They've lost to Detroit for the third time this season, and it's a game where a lot of their bigger guys aren't really stepping up. Sure, Nick Suzuki got a goal. That was nice. Assisted by Kovalchuk too. That's awesome. Sure, Kovalchuk and Suzuki combined for assists on the Mete goal, which is great. Kovalchuk and Suzuki are the two limelights in Montreal right now, aside from the obvious, the Carey Prices, etc. In fact, Carey Price is in a different boat because he had those comments earlier, which we will not talk about. Let's leave that at bay. But overall, the Habs have, in the words of Kevin Bieksa, kind of hit that wall. It happens every year, doesn't it? The Habs just go on this weird stretch where they just can't stop losing. And it's weird. It's so weird that it always happens. And sure, this is a team that nobody had pegged in as a playoff lock. But the fact of the matter is, this Habs team has been better. Recently. Give it a month in the past, and we saw a better Habs team. A Habs team that can actually compete with these NHL clubs that are getting thrown around towards them. A Habs team that dominated the game with their speed, their technical skill, their crisp passing, and their overall drive. That's the Habs team that we know still kind of does exist with this core. But it's not the Habs team that we saw last night. It's not the Habs team that loses to Detroit 3 games in a season. And credit to the Detroit Red Wings, I like the Red Wings a lot. I like their prospect pool, I like what they have in the future, I like their projection, but any team losing to the Red Wings is a no-go. That is not a territory you want to enter as an NHL team in the 2019-20 season. You don't want to lose to Detroit, and Montreal has done it thrice. So what's next, Habs fans? What's next for the Montreal Canadiens? Is it the tank? And the tank is something that I don't think can actually be achieved through very pinpoint direct means. I don't see the Canadiens trading away their big guys to get prospects and stack up on the first round picks. I don't see that happening because you can't do that in a market as big as Montreal. It can work with Edmonton. It can work with Calgary. It can work with Detroit. It can work with Columbus, even though they did the complete opposite last year. But it won't work with Toronto. It won't work with Vancouver. It won't work with Montreal. These big NHL Canadian fan bases will not accept tanking, trading away your big guys for draft picks and stuff, intentionally building a roster that's built to lose. I don't think tanking is in the future for the Habs, but the way things are going right now, I've seen so many more Habs fans on the Lafreniere train this week than I have pretty much all of the past year. Actually, no, we're only 7 days into the year. The past last year, let's just say. And as a Red Wings fan, as a Canadiens fan, it's kind of bittersweet for me because I would love it if Lafreniere went to either of the Habs or the Red Wings. But I understand that if it were up to me, I would choose Motown. Detroit kind of needs that number 1 left wing. The Habs, at least you have a few really good elite prospects already. And I love the Red Wings prospect pool too, but it's no Montreal prospect pool. In my opinion, the Canadiens pretty much just have everything on lock. They got the right wingers, they got the centers. The left wings, sure, you could add a Lafreniere, that wouldn't hurt. But I think Lafreniere would thrive in Detroit. Thrive with a guy like Dylan Larkin. Thrive with a guy like Filip Zadina. Ooh, that sounds great. But obviously, with the whole tanking thing coming into effect and the whole losing thing coming into effect, Habs fans have their eyes on the prize too. So obviously, I wouldn't hate if either of these teams got Lafreniere. Hey, I wouldn't hate it if the Canucks got Lafreniere by some miracle. That would be really cool too. But this game from last night shows off two things. First off, the Red Wings have what it takes in Zadina. Haha, that's a great big you-know-what to the Montreal Canadiens, Filip Zadina scoring that game-winning goal. And secondly, this game was kind of like a signal as to the direction and the unfortunate wall that the Habs have hit. I want the Habs to make the playoffs. I want them to win as many games as they can. But when you're losing games like this, where everybody's frustrated and the timelines are just kind of getting messed up here, it doesn't feel good. It really doesn't. So we're nearing the end of the gameplay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Social Trolls 99, and bye.